September as we start back up. First Tuesdays is a series of informal events held every month of the school year. These events aim to promote innovation at SSU and in the North Bay area by providing opportunities for students to connect with seasoned entrepreneurs and learn more about our programs and potential opportunities to create new ventures. For more information about this and other SSU entrepreneurship programs, please visit sbe.sonoma.edu/entrepreneurship, and you'll be able to find a link in the chat later. So we're extremely fortunate today to have several members of the North Coast chapter of the SCORE organization with us. SCORE's mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. With the nation's largest network of volunteer expert business mentors, SCORE has helped more than 11 million entrepreneurs since 1964. Jeff Norby will give us an introduction to the types of resources entrepreneurs need and the way SCORE can help entrepreneurs out. Chuck Levine and Dan Selleck will tell us some of the keys to success, as well as some of the pitfalls and how to avoid them when developing your business plan. And Spencer Bader will give us highlights from various success stories. We've asked each of them to give us a brief introduction of a few of the positions and experience that make up their entrepreneurial experience. And we will have a more complete bio posted on the website that you can review later. As they present, please type any questions you have for them in the chat, and we'll have a brief Q&A session as time permits at the end. We will try to get to as many questions as we can, but you can also post them on the chat, and we'll post them later on the website. So if you don't get to your question, don't worry about it. We'll get more follow-up later. So let's go ahead and get started by handing things over to Jeff.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thank you, everyone. Really, really happy to be here this afternoon. Thanks very much to SSU for involving SCORE, and with North Coast SCORE specifically, our chapter here, and that covers Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, and Lake counties. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our chapter. Let me start with myself, though. So I've been working, or volunteering, I should say, with SCORE for about 4 or 5 years, both here in the North Coast chapter, but also initially out in the Chicago area, which is where I was living for many years. My background, I started many, many years ago, as you can probably tell, in the financial side, came up through accounting and finance positions, and worked myself into more of a general management position. And for about the last 20 years, helped run a company, which was initially a printing company, which, you know, is a pretty old school technology, which we then took into a different direction, eventually brought on some financial partners, brought in private equity money, and eventually exited through a sale to a significant acquirer in the space we were in. So it was a very interesting, very exciting, and very challenging at times path that we went on for about the last 20 years of my career, but it was also incredibly successful and a lot of fun. I think I learned a few things, and it's been really enjoyable to take some of those learnings and bring them to help folks in our communities as they take a shot at becoming an entrepreneur or taking in a business they've already started and improving it. So let me tell you a bit about SCORE. So Kirsten's running my slides for me, so I'm going to have you advance to the next one, if you don't mind. And to the next one after that. This is all just pictures, so let's get to a little bit of the meat here. So SCORE goes back a number of years, you can tell. We are a partner, a resource partner, however you want to label it, of the Small Business Administration, the SBA. And we work very closely with them on a lot of projects, very specifically and very recently with the PPP program I'm sure many of you are aware of. And as you can see, our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities. And you know, that is exactly what North Coast and all of us that are here today, and all those who are members of our chapter here and throughout the country, are very focused on. All of us are volunteers. We all come from a lot of different backgrounds, different industries, different types of business experience, from service to, you know, finance to heavy industry and everything in between. And all of us are very interested in helping foster the growth of small businesses throughout our communities. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I think that first little point there on the slide is really an important one, because it's, you know, we are one of those many cases, unheard of resources. We've got all these people that have a lot of experience, and everything we do is free. We work very hard to make sure that our services are provided in a not only free to everyone, but also in a way that there's no conflicts whatsoever. We're doing this strictly voluntarily, all of us that are doing this. We can offer all sorts of, we have a lot of seminars, as you might imagine now, with everything being virtual. We have a lot of programs that are online. In the good old days that hopefully we'll be back to in the future, we have a lot of classes that we offer throughout the areas that we service. And one of the things we've learned, which is probably similar to many organizations, is as we've gone through this pandemic, we've really been able to collaborate across all of the chapters, not only here in the greater Bay Area, but around the country and throughout the state. And we've offered to our clients a very significant portfolio, I'll say, of courses that cover just about anything you can imagine. And we think those are incredibly useful, and I think I know they've been very well attended over the last 10, 12 months. Next slide, please. So you'll see here, there's about 10,000 of us here locally, as we'll get to in a little bit. There's about 40 people. But it's a very significant group of folks, again, with all sorts of different backgrounds, covering virtually every community you can imagine. Next slide, please. A little bit of, statistics about the businesses we've helped create, the jobs, and the way we've helped increase. As I said, all of us that are here today, we take this very, very personally. We all really believe and had a lot of fun in our careers, and we think it's really important that we help give back. And one of the ways we're giving back is helping folks who are looking to start a business, or as I said, have a business that they're looking for some help on, and help them in any way we can, through our resources, through collaborating with other chapters, bringing in whatever the resources that are necessary. Next chapter, or next slide, please. So here's who we help. As you might imagine, a lot of our work is in early stage entrepreneurs, a lot of small startup businesses. And one of the areas that we'll be focusing on today that Chuck and Dan are going to be talking to specifically is about the importance of building a really solid plan and really knowing you've got that plan to guide where you're going to go as a startup business. But we do a lot with early stage entrepreneurs. We do a lot with startup. We also do a lot with established businesses. I think that sort of surprises some people, but we're quite frequently called in by a small proprietor who's, say, got an issue with marketing. They're trying to figure out how to market the business better, or they want to expand into a different segment or a different geographic area, and they're looking for some advice. And they look to someone like SCORE because, again, it is free, which is, pretty nice, but also there's just a wealth of knowledge there, which can be very, very helpful. Transitioning business is the fourth point. We do help with that. And we have a number of people here locally that are very familiar and have a lot of experience with not only funding business for the startup, but also transitioning out, selling the business, and realizing the gains that you've earned over many years of running your business. Next slide, please. So go on to the next one. I'm just going to go on. This is about us locally, the next one. Yeah, and one more, please. Okay, so here's North Coast. A little bit of information. As I mentioned, we operate and serve Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Lake, and Humboldt. We have 35, 40 folks who are doing this across those areas. 200 individual client mentoring sessions year to date. That's this year, obviously. A lot of local workshops. Again, there's quite a few of us here. This is something we really believe in, and if there's ways we can help you as you're looking to advance your business and grow your business or start your business, or help others that very, very interested in hearing from them and from you to see how we can help. So that's really a quick overview of SCORE, North Coast SCORE, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris to introduce Dan and Chuck.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. It's awesome resources available to everybody here. I really hope everybody takes advantage of that. I actually have used some of those resources myself in the past. So this is amazing things when you really think about how much experience comes through SCORE and what we can get for free. So let's turn it over to Chuck and Dan and let them talk about success in business planning.
I'll start off with a little bit of a bio of myself. I graduated from Northwestern Graduate School of Management and took a job at Procter & Gamble. I started at the bottom on Pampers and eventually became the brand manager of Procter & Gamble's biggest business. But after about 6 years, I decided I wanted to get into technology, and I went to General Electric, followed by AT&T, where I invented businesses and turned some businesses around, prior to taking my first job as the CEO of a startup, which took about 1 year before it failed. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Eventually, I went to work for Octel, which invented the voicemail business for corporations, and stayed there for about 3 years, retired, and then was taken out of retirement by a company that was starting a new cell phone business. We started that cell phone business in 1997. It became the fastest growing business in history. It grew from $0 of revenue to over $10 billion in 4.5 years. When I left, it was $13 billion. You know it as Sprint PCS. And since that time, I've served on corporate and not-for-profit boards of directors, and now focusing entirely on not-for-profit boards and SCORE as well. So with that, let me begin by saying that, first of all, not everybody should start a business. And today we're going to discuss some of the key success factors that are required to be successful, understanding how you focus your time and energy to build a successful business, and also discuss some of the pitfalls that are likely to find you if you don't find them first. At the end of the session today, I'm hoping you'll be able to better realistically decide if you are a good entrepreneurial candidate. So let's go to the next slide. A great idea is the start. It is a necessary condition for success. It is not a sufficient condition for success. Your idea, if it is successful, is going to have to generate a competitive advantage. It has to add real value for your customers. That value may be monetary. It may be saving them money. It may be enabling them to enhance their business. It may be able to make them more profitable. The value could be emotional. The image, the style, it might be new, it might be unique. And if there's no perceived value by your customer, you're not going to make a sale. So if you're thinking, for example, about starting a restaurant, you have to ask yourself, what's going to make it different than other people who have similar restaurants? What makes it better? What makes people say, yep, that's the one I want to go to? It has to be differentiated, and it has to be achievable in a time frame that fits within your capital limitations. So if you've got a business that is likely to lose $20,000 a year for the first 2 years, you'd better have access to at least $40,000. It also has to be sustainable over time. If somebody can knock your idea off easily and quickly, you're unlikely to be successful long term. You need to think ahead. And it has to be capable of being communicated simply and effectively. So when we started Sprint, we had some advantages. We had the only all digital network at the time. We were competing against cell phone companies that had a combination of analog and digital networks. So we could set ourselves apart because our calls weren't scratchy. And typically at that time, when a cell phone call started, the first thing people would say is, guess where I'm calling from? And the answer would almost always be, you're calling from your phone. I can tell because it sounds terrible. And with Sprint, you could have the same kind of call sound as if it was a landline call. And so the way we communicated that was clear communications, clearly communicated, clear across the country. And we were able to do it at an affordable price, making it a compelling offer that we could effectively communicate. Next slide, please. The business plan is really the tool that you use both to sell investors and yourself. I've had a number of entrepreneurs come to me and say, I don't need a business plan because I really don't need anybody else's money. A business plan is still critical to help you understand what your own underlying assumptions are and whether they make sense. And the plan has to be compelling if you do need investors, and it has to answer the question that they're asking, what's in it for me? It has to be realistic. It needs to be supported with research and data. If you have unwarranted optimism, I'm going into a $1 billion market and I'm going to get 10% of it in the first year, investors immediately can see through optimism that isn't warranted by some of your underlying assumptions. Your business plan needs to be thorough. You need to include your projected revenue and all of your costs. You probably want to do it at several different levels. A level that's optimistic, a level that's most likely, and a level that's pessimistic. The reason that you want to do a pessimistic level is you want to make sure that even if everything doesn't work out the way you think it will and that you hope it will, that you still have the cash to survive. Because most businesses fail when they run out of cash. If you don't know your cash flow needs, if you don't know your break even, and if you don't understand your business, investors will walk away regardless of the opportunity. So your assumptions need to be clear and they need to be defensible. I told you that when I started my first business, it failed, and it failed within a year. And it failed because of a single assumption that proved to be wrong. That business was based on the assumption that there was a new pen-based computer coming out that would be successful. That assumption seemed realistic because the pen-based computer was being produced by Apple. It was called the Apple Newton. Most of you have never heard of it because it didn't succeed. We assumed that it would and that you would need software to support it. We produced that software, but when the product failed, we failed along with it. Let's go to the next slide. Beyond just failing because you have an erroneous assumption, funding in cash, as I said, is one of the biggest reasons. You need to understand what you need to get off the ground, and you need to manage your cash flow during the startup phase until you can generate positive free cash flow. And if your business plan says you need $20,000, my suggestion is you have more than that, because typically you're going to find yourself spending more than you thought on things that you didn't anticipate, and you don't want to run out of cash when you're on the borderline of success. If you're a poor planner, you'll be a poor executor. Your business plan won't be perfect. And one of the things that I always emphasize to my entrepreneurs is don't try to make your business plan perfect, because it won't be. You've got to evaluate all the likely opportunities and challenges, make your best guess, and then look at the assumptions over time and see how you need to change them. Unless your plan is executable, it's just going to be another great idea that sits on the shelf and never goes anywhere. And you've got to find, you've got to keep, and you've got to motivate the people to help you, especially as the business grows. People have asked me in Sprint what the toughest challenge was. And the toughest challenge is easy. Wasn't easy to execute, though. And it was to grow the company from a few people to 50,000 people over just a few years, and to be able to manage the organization and the culture that went with it. Let's go to the next slide. Most of the entrepreneurs that have been successful have failed before. They typically have some characteristics, though, that are common among them. They have an idea that does add real value for their customers. They can implement it, they can articulate it, and they can make it into a workable plan. They can organize, lead, and manage the team that allows them to achieve that plan. And when they hit obstacles, they persevere. They're able to overcome problems, which are inevitable, and eventually be successful. When you fail, the trick is identify why you failed, learn from it, and don't make the same mistake twice. But do try again. Failure is an opportunity to begin again with better information and more experience. Next slide. kinds of questions you have to answer to decide whether you really are a good potential entrepreneur is, why are you qualified? People invest in people as well as ideas. You can have the best idea in the world, but if people aren't comfortable that you can execute, they aren't going to invest in you. You've got to know what you're selling, know why it's better than the alternatives, understand that it's something that customers want or need, and that it will be profitable for your investor. Your investor isn't nearly as concerned with understanding how you're going to make money as how they're going to make money. You need to understand your target market. Who is it? Is it large enough? Can you get at it? And you need to understand timing. You need to understand when your product or service will be available and how long it's going to take for your investors to see a return on their investment. So with that, let me turn it back, and Chris, take it from here.
Thanks, Chuck. Awesome advice. You know, many of us that have been down this road have seen those bumps you talked about. I tend to agree with you. One of the things I share with people a lot is that you're going to have to spend more than you thought, and it's going to take longer than you really think in the beginning. So you got to make contingency plans to make that work. So some great advice I'm hoping everybody is paying attention to on here. So thank you very much, Chuck. So let me move on to the next section here, and we'll hand it over to Spencer.
Okay, if I can figure out how to do the sharing the screen here. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to share, but let's see if we can get the right slides up.
Just let me know if you need me to jump in.
Okay. No, I think you better put them up for me. I'm sharing the wrong thing for some reason. I'm not sure why. While you're doing that, I'll give you a little background. I, like Chris, worked for Hewlett Packard and Agilent for a number of years, most of it up here in Sonoma County, and retired from that in 2001. Did a little bit of consulting, did some startup work down in San Jose, and then went to work for the Sonoma County Water Agency, a local independent agency up here in the North Bay. It's about a $70 million a year business and has wholesale water sales as well as water purification and a number of interesting projects going on. I was the finance manager basically for that, the CFO. So I've had a pretty varied background. Most of my time at Hewlett Packard was in manufacturing or manufacturing related work. And I've been a SCORE volunteer for a total of about 15 years now. So I've seen a lot of startups and those kind of things. You know, our North Coast SCORE chapter has a bunch of people that are experienced and really committed to client successes. Let's look at some of those successes. If you want to hit the next slide, and you can do these one at a time. Probably our biggest success was a organic chicken nuggets startup. A couple of local ladies had an idea that chicken McNuggets were a good thing, but they weren't very healthy. So these folks invented some organic chicken, and they grew their business to a multi-million-dollar company and sold the brand to a national firm. They're now living a good life up in Oregon and starting yet another business. And our mentors here help them with their original business plan and their marketing. Next, click. Small smog auto repair organization or business down in South Santa Rosa off Santa Rosa Avenue. Young man had been a mechanic a long time, was really good at it, started his own business, got his smog check license, and then knew some of the things that he didn't know. And so in this particular case, I helped him learn how to read and what to look for in his financial statements. I also helped him with some of his marketing materials and ways of converting. Whoops, there went the slide somehow. There we go. Converting his smog check customers into actual repair and maintenance customers. And he has been quite successful even during COVID time by keeping his putting out coupons for the smog checks, which people continue to need, and how to really use his website. And he also remodeled his waiting room so that it was a lot more comfortable and appealing to the clients that were waiting for their cars to be smog checked. So that's been an ongoing growth and success story. The next one. This is a really interesting one. A young lady from Sonoma State who had an idea that she knew how to design clothes for 20-somethings and started her own business. We gave her some help, particularly with marketing and with her startup expenses and funding. She opened a store and has been successful even through COVID in selling her products or her clothes, both online and out of the brick and mortar store. And she volunteered eventually to be a SCORE mentor. So she's one of us now. And let's see, the fourth one was, this is a real interesting company. They had gone to big events and been selling sort of souvenir T-shirts and things at these big events. But I can't remember the name of the one out in the middle of the desert in Nevada. But anyway, that's the kind of event that they were going to. They were growing and they wanted to get closer to some of the production facilities and resources in Southern California down by Los Angeles. So they moved down there, got all set up, bought some new machinery, hired some people, and then COVID hit and all of their events, it sort of vanished. So they've been struggling, and I've continued helping them with how to just stay alive during the COVID. What can they sell online rather than at the event itself? And so far they've been successful. They've gotten a couple of PPP loans, but they've basically had to pivot their whole business plan until the events come back. And the last one is a local machine shop. They had basically a captive machine shop for another local business that did extraction from cannabis and got the oils out of the cannabis plants. And they made this machine shop made a lot of the parts for the machine that did that. Well, it turned out that the extraction company was very successful and got sold to another company back in the Midwest somewhere. And all of a sudden, this machine shop's primary customer had left. So I've been working very closely with them to make sure that they went back and were able to market to past customers, made new customer outreach. Basically, again, a story of pivoting and having to restart, and then obviously watch your cash flow very carefully. The owner of the machine shop was a great engineer and a great knew a lot about CNC programming and all of that, but he didn't know much about finance. So a big part of the story was helping him understand cash flow and how to lengthen his payables and shorten his receivables and those kinds, and keep his inventories low. So those are our 5 fairly typical clients that have had success, stayed in business, and stayed being able to employ their employees even through COVID and through tough times. But that's the kind of thing that we do, and hopefully we can help more of you. So I think it's probably time for questions at this point. You can start asking whatever you want.
Great, Spencer. Thank you very much. I think that's always awesome to kind of see some of the success stories that are out there and see what kind of impact people like yourselves with SCORE have been able to make. I know I've referred several students over the years over to the SCORE organization to help get things started. So I'd be interested to follow up with you on a few of those and see how that's going. That's great. So yeah, please post your questions to the chat and we'll get to those as soon as possible. I have a few to get things started off here with you guys. A lot of great information we've already covered and really exciting stuff in terms of, you know, somebody thinking about being an entrepreneur or maybe in certain phases of it right now. So good stuff shared already. You know, one of the things that came up in the midst of this is always the challenges, right? I know that Chuck talked a lot about one of the big challenges of the rapid growth. I'm sort of in the middle of that challenge myself here, but you know, there's also other challenges when you get into the early stage pieces that are really interesting to, especially a lot of our students at SSU, really talking about how do I get started? What are the big challenges? What am I facing? What advice would you give for, you know, students that are thinking about entrepreneurs in terms of the very early stage process? If you guys want to jump in, or should I direct that to anybody in particular?
I'm
Chuck,
willing to start that one off. So one of the things that you have to be willing to overcome is your fear of not being perfect. A lot of people who start a business want to have the perfect business plan. They want it done completely before they take the next step. And the fact is, it's not going to be perfect, and you have to be willing to overcome that fear of not being perfect, of not knowing how to do a business plan, of not having done 5-year financials before, and just get it down on paper. You can sit down with your SCORE mentor and you can talk about it. They're likely to challenge some assumptions and find areas where you don't have your ducks all in a row, and that's great, because that gives you the opportunity to iterate and to make it better and get started. So I would say overcoming fear is one of the number 1 things that you've got to be willing to do in order to be a successful entrepreneur.
I think that's great advice, Chuck. I often refer back to an old adage that says, you know, great is the enemy of good, right? You spend too much time trying to make it perfect and trying to get there. You don't end up with a good solution that could get you a long ways, and you can iterate and get there. I think that's one of the common themes I see through entrepreneurship is trying to understand that iteration. And, you know, the concept of pivoting that came up in the presentations, right? Is that I think the real trick for people to understand is that many of the companies that are out there aren't doing what they originally set out to do. Right?
Right.
They aren't actually, you know, doing what their original business plan said they were going to do. They put the right people together. They understood the opportunity. You know, Chuck gave an example of one where, you know, they were dependent on another product. And, you know, in that case, the product went away completely. So the pivot was, you know, to get out of the business. But in some cases, you can pivot to another business and move on.
Hey, Chris, can I add a little more to what was Chuck just talked about? I think one of the real strengths of SCORE, or actually any, if you've got good advisors, whoever they might be, in terms of your thinking through starting a business, following up on what Chuck talked about in terms of the importance of a business plan. One of the things I think our mentors are really good at helping clients through is, I think Chuck laid out really well, and Spencer, is really challenging you and your thinking and your assumptions. You know, it's real easy. I shouldn't say that. It's very common. All of us have done this who have started businesses, that when you're sort of on your own, or you're with, you know, your coworkers or your team that's helping you get this thing off the ground, there's a lot of like, this is great, it's going to go, it's going to be awesome. And I think one of the real advantages of a SCORE mentor or another advisor is helping you really objectively look at all those assumptions as Chuck laid out, and really validating what you're doing, so that before you start moving down the road and investing yours or other people's money, you've really challenged yourself. Because you're gonna, especially if you go out for money, you're gonna get challenged. I mean, those folks are gonna ask a lot of hard-hitting questions, and you need to be ready for those. So I just wanted to add that little bit.
Great advice, Jeff. I think that's really important for people to understand, is you need to be able to get independent people coming out that have experience and have them challenge your assumptions, especially before you get out there trying to do a pitch for getting funding for things. That's a great lead into one of my other big questions. Is we're about to head into our Sonoma State pitch competition, right? Every year we have entrepreneurial students here at Sonoma State come together. A lot of great ideas come out of that. We put them together and do a pitch competition and have entrepreneurs come in and do a judging. And this year is going to be great. We're going to have a lot of people come in and do the pitch. And then when we've picked the top teams, then we're going to follow on with some great mentorship and see what we can do to help them get things off the ground. So what advice would you guys, I guess I would ask each of you, what advice would you give to a student, right? If we give them, a 60-second elevator pitch, right? If you understand what an elevator pitch is as a student, right? You may only get that 60 seconds of being in the elevator with somebody that's a key influencer, right? What advice would you guys give in terms of what they should look for in a great elevator pitch?
I'll take that one. I think you've got to be able to identify what it is your value proposition is, who your customers are, and why you are different. What are you setting out to do, and what value does the customer perceive in that, are the two most important parts of it. And don't get so wrapped up in your own idea that you forget that you may need to modify it. Those are, I think it was either Eisenhower or Patton or one of the generals from World War II that said a battle plan is good for until the first shot is fired. Well, that's kind of the same way with business. Don't get stubborn about it. If you need to pivot, you need to change, be willing to do so.
Great advice, Spencer. I've heard that from a lot of people over the years. Like, one of the big things is, especially as an inventor, is like, you don't want to get too in love with your idea that it blinds you from seeing, what's really going on with the customer side of things. So any other advice from anybody else on the elevator pitch side of things we can help with the students?
This is David. Elevator pitches are very short, so you have to really focus on the pain and the problem that you're going to solve, the premise and the product plan. If you can fit the people and the team in, and then prove for credibility. And if you happen to be taking a long elevator ride, try to get the purpose and profit potential in there. So there's a lot of P's in that presentation, but those are the core elements that I would look for.
I think it's a great synopsis. Thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. Well, I really appreciate that. That'll be helpful for our students. We'll share a lot of that. Let me take a couple of questions here from the audience, right? One is that it says, in addition to supporting development of financial reports, can SCORE help with business modeling?
Several of us are familiar with the business model canvas. I know I've judged business model canvas competitions at Sonoma State a couple of times, and also down at Holt's MBA program. So generally we can. Some of our mentors prefer to use the more traditional 20-page template that you fill out, or we can also find mentors that are familiar with the business model canvas shortcut notation. You can't ignore the financial template, and SCORE has a couple of really good startup financial projection templates, Excel workbooks with a number of different sheets, and that carry you through basically doing a cash flow projection for up to 3 years. So the basic answer is yes, we can help a lot with any part of the business modeling that you need.
Yeah, let me add to that I think one of the great resources that's available on SCORE that I pointed a lot of the entrepreneurial students to is those kind of templates that you guys have there available, those spreadsheets that really help you get in and think about things you may not have thought about, right? That spreadsheet's very complete on the financial side to think about a lot of the areas you may not have thought about originally. And like was mentioned earlier, a lot of people come in, they've got a great idea. Maybe they're good engineering side of things. Maybe they don't have the finance side of things. Getting a chance to understand and help the bigger picture and how those all fit together is a huge part of that. So a lot of great resources in there that you can go in and download directly from SCORE, and then also get advice directly from advisors like yourself. So I really appreciate that. So another great question to follow up on that one came in from the audience is, how often do you recommend revisiting a business plan, once the business is up and running?
I'll take a shot at that one. I don't think there is a fixed answer to that. When you're starting a business, as you see problems in some of your assumptions and as you run into challenges, that's a good opportunity to say, what in my business plan might need to be changed so that I can accurately reflect the future based on what I know to be the reality. So in a new business, you may be relooking at your business plan every few weeks. Over time, once your business is established, you certainly want to look at it at least once a year as you redo your business plan, but it's often going to be even more frequent than that because the environment around you will change. When COVID hit, good entrepreneurs went back to their business plan and said, what does this mean? How is my business likely to change? What can I do to adapt? And what can I do to meet my customers' needs better than other people who might be in the same kind of business I'm in?
If I could add to that, one of the great things about starting a business in this day and age is that there is so much access to mentors, organizations like SCORE, but also there's the angel investing community, and then after that, the venture community. And these are people with experience. So there's a lot of good information and recommendations to be heard. You have to filter through it, but most successful startups, if you talk to the creators, they're very entrepreneurial, and you'll find most of them have probably pivoted to some degree from 10% all the way up to 100%. Many successful businesses are not doing today what they originally started at, which is why you'll hear venture people say they focus on the people more than the idea. So invest in yourself. Your goal should be growth and business and everything else, but listen to what people might be telling you. And if you're being invested in, odds are they're looking to you to make those final choices, and you got to be flexible to make the right ones.
Both great points. Thanks, David. I think that's really important to understand about that flexibility and doing that. I kind of agree with Chuck in the way I think about it, right? I don't think of it as a business plan. I think about it as a business planning process that's ongoing on a regular basis, right? And that's one of the things in the class that we teach here. We do use the business model canvas to try to get that concept across, that the assumptions are always changing. You know, this year has been an interesting challenge that really points that out really well. We've had massive challenges in the marketplace with things shutting down with COVID. And then I'm sure everybody's aware there's been some massive changes in the supply chain across the whole world right now, which is causing some huge challenges and I think huge opportunities. One of the things that you think about from an entrepreneurial standpoint is that these are the times when things like this happen, that this also opens a lot of opportunities that might not have been there before and lets people think about it. Obviously, anybody that's watched Zoom stock understands that one right now with what's happened. So let me go back to the audience here and see. This is an interesting one. Do you guys being part of the North Coast here, do you feel like there's a deep bench of tech talent here in Sonoma County to grow and scale a business today as there was for Don Green, for those of us that remember the Telecom Valley era? I don't know if you guys want to speak. Anybody wants to speak to that one?
So we're talking tech talent, meaning folks in the tech industry, I'm assuming is what he's talking about.
I assume that's what they're talking about. So I think they're concerned about tech talent in Sonoma County.
Yeah, I mean, I think Spencer probably
There
could
is
jump in here because, oh, go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead.
There's definitely talent in the county. The issue is, how do you access it?
Mhm.
The best tech talent is in incredible demand. So, and you don't have to just work in the North Bay anymore. So if you're incredibly talented and you happen to live in Santa Rosa, you could well be working for a Boston company. It no longer makes that much difference. Similarly, if you're based here in Santa Rosa and you want talent, maybe the best talent is available in Boston or Omaha or Minneapolis or Austin. And so you need to be willing to make sure that you understand how important co-location is to what you're doing. And it may not be very important. If it's not, go for the best talent you can find. The other problem is that talent is expensive. And you're going to either have to pay up for the talent up front or find a different way to incent people in order to contribute to what you're doing. That may be a consultant who's willing to work part-time on what you do and part-time on something else. It may be offering them equity in your new company so that they may not make much money today, but if they believe in you and if they're right, they're going to make a ton of money at the back end. So you have to be creative in thinking about what it is you need, where you can get them, and how you can get them.
And also, it seems like we could use an incubator up here to find, to draw the talent out. I'm sure there's talent, but I moved here from St. Louis about 3 years ago, full-time. And there were a couple of different incubators in different industries focused. And, St. Louis is becoming a very tech-rich town because of angel investing in the incubators, as well as some venture funding that has grown up there. Again, pretty new here. There might be an incubator that I haven't seen, but I think we could use one or more.
I think
Yeah, the incubators have come and gone in Sonoma County a couple times. Marginally successful. There was one called Sprout that worked out of the Rohnert Park facility, the old HP facility down there. And it sponsored or spawned probably 3 or 4 successful startups over the course of its life, but I don't think it's working anymore. And then there was one down in Marin that kind of went out of business as well.
Yeah, and Chris, if I could also add on, sort of following up what Chuck was saying, I agree 100%. I mean, one of the things, positive things that's come out of the pandemic has certainly been the collaboration virtually, such as this. And one of the things that for SCORE is our connection to all the other chapters. So to Chuck's point about, well, it doesn't really matter specifically that the person, the tech knowledge lives in Santa Rosa or Petaluma. You know, we've made a lot of connections, certainly in terms of our online courses from the Silicon Valley branch. There's a big Silicon chapter. There's a good East Bay chapter. There's a San Francisco chapter. So we're reaching out to help our clients with those folks, because obviously there's people who have come out of the industry who or know people. So it's one of those, like Chuck said, you know, where it is making those connections to find those resources you want, because the resources could be anywhere. It doesn't really matter that they're not living in our particular neighborhood a whole lot of times.
Yep, I agree.
It also really depends on the industry. If you're in the hospitality, food, wine industry, there's ample people around in Sonoma County and Napa. For high tech, it's a little bit tougher, and certainly our cost of living, housing prices, and things don't help that. But using the Zoom meeting and group participation software that's available now, you should be able to recruit if you have a business that suits itself to remote teams and remote work spaces.
Yeah, I would contend in the tech business, you know, one of the things you need to do is get better at that, right? It's going to be more and more that way over time. I can tell you, as a tech company myself, we're doing a lot of those same things Chuck mentioned, right? We have a distributed team. We're using consultants. We're, you know, across the country now on different things. A core team here and locally, and make it work. And I would add the comment to the question, having been here through that era when they started Telecom Valley and the very first startup, both of my business partners were actually part of that, is that there actually is more tech talent here in the county now than there was back then. Most people don't realize there wasn't a whole lot of tech. It had to be attracted in. And, you know, there's still opportunities here to attract that talent in, because a lot of it is in the South Bay, where even though it's expensive in the North Bay, it's a lot more expensive in the South Bay. So there's still a lot of opportunity here in the space. So great.
And there are also remote teams and working in Eastern Europe, working in Asia, at countries other than China. There are some real advantages to that. You can get 24 hours a day development going if you're working with a software development team in India, for instance. Much cheaper than here, and at the same time they can be working on stuff while you're testing what they worked on yesterday.
Great point, Spencer. I've used both of those. There's some great tech talent in Eastern Europe that's very affordable. There's great tech talent across Asia. So there's a lot more options these days than there used to be. And there's a lot more technology to help you manage those across that. So
Do that.
a lot of options for people. So great. Well, I'm running out of time here. I'm going to jump into the outro. This is awesome advice for everybody. And I just want to encourage anybody in the audience and anybody else you know that might be interested in being an entrepreneur, that the SCORE organization is available, and a lot of great talent there for you to draw on to help with anything. So thank you again for joining us for this event. And particularly want to thank all the SCORE panelists and for David Ripes for organizing all this for us. This has been a great opportunity, and I hope we get a chance to follow on. Again, keep in mind, we have our Seawolf pitch competition taking place online Tuesday, April 20th from noon to 1:30. So we'll get a chance to tell you more about that and what's happening there. So please stay tuned and sign up for that. You'll be able to find out more on our website at the Sonoma County Entrepreneur website, and also the business website at sbe.sonoma.edu/seawolf-pitch-competition. So this is a great opportunity for business students to join with engineering students and win some significant cash prizes. So most importantly, this year we have exciting plans for a follow-up program to bring the best of the pitch competition participants to continue working under supervision of our entrepreneurs and residents through a structured approach to launching new ventures. And obviously the the SCORE advisors will be a big part of that as we move forward, right? So we have outstanding projects in the wine innovation and entrepreneurship, and they'll be allowed in the pitch competition for the Sonoma Wine Growers Association pitch day this summer as well. So stay tuned for all of that. So again, thank you all very much. We really appreciate you joining us for these first Tuesday's events, and we expect to pick this back up in September when school starts back up again. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.